you go to our website, which is energizingyoungvoters.com. And I'm going to go back to the home page just so you can see it. So this is what you get to. And then you can either go to this section, which says what we do, and there's a drop down that this page is for young people. This is for people in community groups, including us when we teach. And then there's a section for the League of Women Voters, which talks about getting into a school and how do you set up a voter registration drive and all those things. So we go to the educators and community groups page. And as you scroll down, there is a description of the 2 suites of programs that we have that match the league goals. So this is matching the empowering voters. This matches the defending democracy. What we just saw was part of module 4, the voting simulation. When you click on that, you'll see a short description of it. And you'll see this, which says how to vote rules of the road. And that's what we just saw. If you click on the module, this is the PowerPoint.
Excellent.
And this is the script that contains all of those words that I just said.
Okay. All right.
So you should be set.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So I'm sitting in, just so you know, from Maine on behalf of our Maine Student Votes and League of Women's Voters. So I volunteer with the Youth Engagement Program. So I wanted to sit in and get some notes here because you guys are doing such amazing work. So
I am so glad you're here, Barbara. Thank you for coming. That makes my heart happy. Okay, I would like to play that video again that introduces the voting simulation so that Barbara can see it.
sure. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to the voting simulation, and underneath that is the view module. So we did it in reverse. And there are always some extra documents that are helpful to people who might be, putting on something like this. So we looked at how to vote rules of the road. This is more like a handbook. I'm going to look at the materials specifically for this because as we go through it, you'll hear me talk about ballot materials and exit tickets and all of these other things. There have been times when kids needed something to keep them occupied while they were waiting to use a voting booth. And so these were donated to us by one of the teachers in one of the districts that we did it with. So there's lots of things, and you can find more things yourself. There are sample press releases here that you can use as a template for your own setting. This is the template for organizing the responses that the kids give you on the exit tickets. And these are samples that we've used in some districts. Ballots that were actually programmed into the machine based on school issues rather than on things like we had, like your favorite team or your favorite ice cream, that sort of thing. So these are really professional looking. In fact, before they actually did the program the way they do now, the guy who was the printer contacted me and he said, "Is this a real ballot?" I said, "No, it's going to be used in the school. It's what the school district came up with that they wanted their kids to become familiar with." So those are samples that are there for you.
Thank you.
When I went through the slideshow, Barbara, we talked about the fact that in most places now they have tablets that people sign in on. And when we can, we use the tablets in the virtual presentation, the voting simulation. But sometimes either they can't give them to us or it just winds up that they've got one, for example. So if you've got 700 kids going through the simulation, it would just take forever. So instead, we create poll books, and there is just a sample sheet here that you can take to a printer or have printed on 8.5 by 14-inch paper. So I will talk about that too. So I'm going to go back to the simulation itself. And this is the handbook to help you do the entire simulation. And I'm saying that because, like I've mentioned before, you can adapt this. And every single district that we have done this in has had something different about it. But this is the video, Barbara.
Okay.
So the simulation, we actually brought in 2 voting machines from the Middlesex County Board of Elections, and the students the senior students in their health classes are first getting a presentation by our Rho Kappa board members. The presentation goes over some of the logistics about voting, how to register, how to actually vote, the different ways to vote, so that they have that knowledge so that they can be prepared for the upcoming elections.
Well, I feel like it's definitely given me a more real life experience on what to expect when going to the voting booth. And I feel it also informed me. Like, for example, I didn't know that I could register for voting before the age of 18, which is very interesting. And I think that it's an important process to do. And I just think that it could positively impact students like me who don't really have a sense of what voting really is.
So I think the simulation is important because it is going to ease some of the anxieties around first-time voting. One of the things that we want to do is try to increase youth voter turnout. And if it's your first time to vote and you're uneasy about what the whole process is, then you're going to be less likely to actually turn up. So you might be registered. Doesn't matter if you're registered, you actually have to turn up to vote.
That was created by one of the schools we went into this year, and that's something that you can use to share with people that you're trying to convince that you would like to come in and help them create this. And it can be complicated or it can be simple. You can adjust it. And I mentioned before you got on, Barbara, that we have never done it one place where they haven't asked us to come back again. And the boards of elections will say, every single student in this county should have this experience. So once you get your foot in the door once, you're going to find it very easy to convince other districts to do it. So, all right, let me share the actual handbook then. So we've listed the actual objectives. And Barbara, for somebody like you would have to go through it and double check that what's here adapts, is appropriate for Maine, and just adapt it. You can do that with any of the materials that we have. And then there's a list of the materials that the league should be responsible for, and that the county boards of elections supplies, and you can ask the schools to supply. There's nothing on there that is out of the ordinary, so you don't have to worry about what the school supplies or what the county board of elections supplies. But let's go back up to the materials that the league supplies. Some of them are straightforward. One of the things that you need to do is to make sure that if you're going to do a registration drive ahead of time, that you've got the voter registration forms for the county in which the school is located. and that you've got vote by mail applications at the same time. Because in many cases, we're dealing with seniors in high school, and many of the seniors will be going away to college. And so it's really important for them to understand that in most cases, they can choose to vote either where they're currently living or in the state that they moved to in order to go to college. Vote.gov has a section in it for college students who are going away, but if they want to vote in New Jersey, this is an ideal time to get them to fill out that vote by mail application form. And we also bring League of Women Voters membership applications because we are really trying very hard to get young people actually enrolled as members of the League. Now, the next one says poll workers. We've had a couple of different things happen. One of them is that the law was just changed in New Jersey so that 16-year-olds are now allowed to apply for and become poll workers. And that was to increase the number of people available. If they're 16 or 17, they still need working papers just as they do for any other job. But it's still something that we tell the kids because we want them to know that they have the opportunity to do some kind of civic engagement, even while they're still in school. And then the next question I get is like, all right, so election day is on a Tuesday, and most of those days for early voting are also on weekdays. Well, New Jersey has just passed another law in January of this year that the kids worked for. They were the ones who worked with their Congress people in New Jersey or their assembly people in New Jersey and then a senator in New Jersey to try to get this passed. And it took them 2 legislative sessions, but they did it. Now every middle school student and every high school student in the state is allowed to take 1 day per school year of an excused absence. So they can use that excused absence day in order to work as a poll worker. And when we tell them they get $300 a day to do that, you should see the eyes light up. So when we work with the Board of Elections, we ask them if they've got an application form. And if they do, we ask them to bring it with them. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. Even if kids can't do that, if they're too young to do that, we ask the Board of Elections workers to train the students to work that day of the voting simulation as poll workers. And that's what you saw the kids doing in that video. It doesn't take long to tell them, how to do the job that they're doing. We do tell them that if they become an actual one, they have to go through a full day of training, but that it's not hard. You can see, from doing it yourself, that the part where you're checking registration, eligibility to vote is relatively simple. So, and then there are just some other things that they have to learn how to do. So, if that's not the case, if we can't use students because the school has a concern with it, then we ask if there are League members who are poll workers who will come in and do the job so that we don't have to count on, so that the Board of Elections doesn't have to send their whole team out to a school on a particular day. As long as there is one person from the Board of Elections there, it's usually sufficient in their minds to assure security of the machines. And that's what they're concerned about, is the security. We also set up in the simulation, we set it up so that 2 kids will be challenged when they go to sign the poll book. One of them allegedly has voted by mail, and one of them has gone to the wrong district, the wrong polling place. So we ask the teachers to check ahead of time to make sure it's not a kid that will be traumatized if we single them out. And we even say, you can tell them, but tell them not to tell anybody else until it happens that day. And when they go up to sign the poll book, they hand the poll worker a card that says vote by mail or wrong district. And at that point in time, the poll worker will stop everything. Everybody's attention is called to the fact that this person is being told they can't vote. What should they do? and there's dead silence, and even the teachers don't know. And so you go through the explanation. Well, you can vote by provisional ballot, and you explain what that is. And then we let them vote in the machine anyway. We give them a paper ballot, which is like the provisional ballot. They go to a special place, they fill it out, but then they get back on the line, so they use the voting machine too. And then the same thing happens the second time, like with wrong polling location. And at this time, you might get one person raising their hand very tentatively, or two, and you ask them, and yes, it's another case where you can use a provisional ballot. And you talk then about how those ballots are counted as well, so they're assured that it is legitimate, and they will be considered, their vote will be considered counted. So you need to make copies of what would look like a sample ballot. So, and have envelopes for those. And I have a bag with a lock on it that I bought on the website that allows you to buy voting materials. But you don't need that. You can just have a bag that you would put it in, so that they can see that there's a separate process for that. Always bring stuff to set yourself up with. We bring League of Women Voters voting material and the stickers. And the stickers can be purchased at Amazon. Not very expensive at all, so it's not going to break the budget if you're really tight for money. We also have a youth voter information card that we can make available to you to print yourself. On one side is a series of steps to make a plan to vote, and on the other side is a QR code that leads them to vote411.org. So that's handy to give out to the kids as they leave, if you've got them. We also have the exit tickets, and the person that we stand at the machine to act like a monitor is the person that gives out the exit tickets. We have pens on the tables, and the kids sit down. So those things I've shown you already. They're on the website. Okay, any questions about materials? All right, so to prepare for the event, I recommend creating a shared folder on a Google Drive, if you're comfortable with Google, that you and the school organizer, the person who is the member of the league in the area in which you are running the event. So if you're doing it in your own league, you're that person, you don't need to find somebody else. But like, I've gone to maybe 5 or 6 counties other than my own. So I need a person in that area who could be my point person. And then the county board of election point person. Everybody has to have editing rights, and everybody can start to use this scope of work, which isn't set up in a very pretty format, but it's really, really helpful. So each person in that group can fill in the information as they get it. So for example, these samples of the schedules of when the kids would be coming down to the voting machines, the teacher put in, the point person at the school, and she just cut and pasted them. So I know when, who and what is coming down at any particular time. Having the contact information for each of the persons, knowing what time to arrive at the school, all of those kinds of things are very, very helpful to have in at your hands quickly. And then we've broken this down time in a chronological fashion. So 2 to 3 months ahead. And you can do it faster than that if you have to. Don't get yourself crazy by trying to do it in 2 or 3 weeks. I would say give yourself at least a month and a half, and 2 to 3 months is better. So you meet with everybody, you find out what the school thinks is going to work best for them, and then you modify everything in this checklist according to what you're going to do. You're going to meet with members of the local League of Women Voters who, if you're not in the county already or the area already, and fill them in on what it's like. So you're going to use something like that video and walk them through. I also have photographs that you can use instead, and I will share those with you as well, just to show some of the different options, some of the different ways different districts have set this up. You also have to call the county board of elections and find out in which the school is located, so the county that it's in, and find out what the arrangements need to be for you to use the voting machine in the school. And of course, once you've done it once in a county, you know. Now, the county boards of elections are required in New Jersey to provide voting education about using the voting machines for 4 years after new machines are implemented. And most of them are willing to do that after the 4 years. Now we are in year 4. So right now they are still obligated to provide it. So that also eases the concern for you. We've only had one county that has kind of dug their heels in and said, no, we can't do that. It's not secure, blah, 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 blah. So we're still working on that. But in most cases, you're going to find it's not they're excited about the fact that you are helping them do their work. Now, as far as transporting the machines, because now they're stored in the warehouse for the Board of Elections, they have to get to the school. And that means transportation. So, and it means a driver and all that kind of stuff. Most boards of elections do that work themselves. And so there is no charge for it. In one of the counties that we worked, they hire an outside firm to do it. So they need to pay the outside firm. So sometimes we've been able to talk them into absorbing that cost because of the fact that they're supposed to provide education. Sometimes we've had to turn to the school, and schools have petty cash accounts that administrators have access to. So we ask them if they can use their petty cash. It's generally been $200, $250 to do that, taking the machine to the school and bringing the machine back again. If that's not possible, then sometimes the local league will have funds available for education, and you can beg. You can use it for you. And if all else fails, then you can contact us and we will arrange either for personal donations to cover that cost. And there are some people in our league who will do that. Or we will use Energizing Our Voters funds themselves. And since we depend on totally on personal donations, that's the last option, please. But we will do it. Okay, this is the information about the fact that machines are impounded for 3 weeks before and after. So check before you call them to make sure that you're not requesting one during that period of time. In order to deliver the machine, the county needs a specific address. So it's the school address, like they can put into Google Maps, but they also need to know, is it going to the gym, the library, because they have to check how they're going to get the machine like up to the 2nd floor or something like that. And it may be a separate door that they need to go to. And they also need the name and the phone number of a person who was delegated to receive the machine and to deliver it back to the driver. In New Jersey, all of our machines are relatively easy to move around. It's something that I can do by myself. It's not heavy. So it can be held in a locked area and then easily moved to the place where it's going to be used by the kids without any stress. In most cases, there will be a monitor from the Board of Elections there, and they will help move it. Okay. So then we're talking about poll books. All right, you'll ask the Board of Elections if the e-poll books will be available. And if it's available, what they can do to help out. In some cases, our Board of Elections in Sussex County, which is a very rural county and most of the schools are relatively small, they programmed every single student's name into the tablets. There have been times when schools have been concerned about privacy issues, but this is government organization to government organization. So generally, like the league is doing this, we don't have access to their private information. It's not been an issue when the Board of Elections has offered to do that. It's an amazing offer because they have to have somebody program that. They're paying the person's hours. In other cases, they have a machine that they can use as a model, and so the kids can see it but not actually use it. And when they can't use it, then we create a poll book. And those are the pages that I showed you in the folder before I started to go through this with you. You can buy on Amazon 8.5, or I guess it's 10 by 14 or 15-inch binders that look like the old poll books that we used to use here. And you can have those pages printed, you can have them punched so that they will fit into the poll book. And sometimes the school will fill the kids' names in on those sheets. But if they can't, because of privacy issues, then when the kids come in to sign in to vote, we have them print their name on one of the lines and then put their signature down on the line next to it. And we do make a big deal about signatures because most kids don't realize that that is an official thing and that they're going to be using that for things like voting for the rest of their lives. In some cases with a ballot, the schools will be able to create their own ballot that aligns with issues in the school. And that may be things like the most valuable player on the football team, or what's the best way for us to contact parents with information about you. It has been, as I saw, and I showed you on that one ballot that we did, it was an actual ballot that elected their student government officers and had some public questions on it. One was a question about the environment around the school, and I can't remember what the other one was. And then we had two public questions that dealt with league issues. One of them was, should 16-year-olds be allowed to vote? I can't remember what the other one was, but it was interesting because in most cases, the 16-year-olds lost when the kids voted.
I'm sorry, what's the response to that one?
Most of the time it lost. It wasn't overwhelming loss, but it might be like 1/3 to 2/3 when we've used that. So it's going to take a little bit of education for these kids to realize that they actually probably are smarter about voting when they're still in school than after they get out, because they have some guidance. But that's kind of an aside. Okay, so it used to be that you had to have those printed, but you don't have to do that anymore. Everything is programmed directly into the voting machines. So there's not a fee anymore, we found. Okay. You also need, so anything else about the ballots or the poll books before I go on? You also need to determine with the school who is going to present the rules of the road. Or the alternative was the student advocate toolkit. And I can explain that to you afterwards, why you might choose one or the other after we go through this. Teachers or students. And the reason that that's preferred is that the kids will listen to other kids much more readily than they will listen to us. And we can have we train the kids ahead of time so that each one takes maybe 1/3 of the slides and their voices change and the kids stay interested more easily. If we can't do that, then we schedule one of our league members who's gone through the presentation or has been a poll worker to share that slideshow with the kids before they go in. We tried it one time doing the slideshow simultaneously with the voting booth, and the voting booth was the kids were distracted. They really wanted to be in that voting booth. We did it another time where there was a folding door between the area where you voted and where the students sat and waited to go back there. And that worked okay. So just check ahead of time and make sure that it's not going to be a distraction if you're going to try to do it the same day. If you try to do it ahead of time, you'll be working with your point person to schedule yourself in for that. Sometimes we've gone into classes beforehand. Sometimes we've held an assembly. The classes tend to work better because the kids are more willing to ask questions. Like that's where I've gotten the question about ethnicity. Like, I am Costa Rican. Can I vote? Yes. Are you an American citizen? Yes. You lived here for 30 days? Yes. Are you 18? Yes. Have you registered? Yes. No, I don't ask the have you registered, and I say yes, then you can vote. And it's always like, really? Because I'm Costa Rican or I'm Mexican or some. Yes, you can vote. The distinction between ethnicity and citizenship is one that you sometimes need to clarify. And they don't want to ask that in front of an assembly with 700 kids in it, but in a small classroom setting, they might. In the big setting, some kids will sometimes come up afterwards to ask a personal question like that. But I think you have the better opportunity in the small group. When we're in a large group, we try to get audiovisual people to provide us with a traveling mic, and we ask one of the students to go up to the student who is asking a question so that we can hear better and they can hear the response when we use the mic back again. But you coordinate all that stuff with the school, and they're used to doing assemblies, so they know how to do this. You don't have to worry about thinking about everything ahead of time. Okay, the other thing, this is a really good opportunity for good PR for the school system. And so you want to find out from them who is going to be the point person in the school system who will do the PR. That's what led to that video that you saw. And that has gone on their website. It's gone out in, there are articles in Tap Into and some of the other things that we have available to us, the local news press, the local press. But you want some kind of PR. Even if it doesn't get printed, send it to whatever the local newspaper is, because you're alerting people to the fact that this is happening. And so maybe the next time you do it, it will get printed. And there are, like I said, there are templates in there, so you don't have to dream this up from, your own head either. But if you have somebody who's a good PR person, by all means, use them, use their talent. And the other thing we suggest is that you have the school person and the league person and yourself begin a list from day one of the people who help. And that includes custodians. It includes cafeteria workers who might give you the free cup of coffee when you walk in the morning at 7 o'clock or whatever it might be. God, high schools begin really early, at least around here. So anybody who has helped to facilitate this. I also keep track of the league members if I'm going into another league's area, so that I can thank them. I thank the teacher, obviously, who's helped me, but making those thank yous is very good PR for us too as a league. Okay, so that's the initial setup stuff. And then as you go on, it's not quite so complicated. And by the way, that does take time, but if you do that ahead of time, it's going to be so much easier as you go forward. All right, so the other thing we do in conjunction with this is not just have the kids vote in a voting. Instead, we have them go through the entire process of all the way from registering through getting the results of the election. We used to do that in chronological order. So we would start with the registration drive and then do everything else. What we've learned is that it is much more likely that you will get a larger number of registrations if you do it at the end, because the voting simulation encourages kids and makes them want to vote. So kids who would never have gone up to a registration table or whatever will do it after this presentation, because we've changed kids' attitudes from I used to be scared, I used to think it was a waste of time, to I can't wait to vote. So that's what we're looking for. So we've moved it from the beginning to the end of the process, and we also have the vote by mail applications available at the same time. Now, in most cases, we set that up right in the same area where the voting simulation is. So the kids go through the whole process, they go through the machine, and then we send them to the area where those things are. Talk to the ladies there, talk to the gentleman there, and get what you need. And then whatever your arrangements are for the kids after they voted, and that you would decide with the teacher, Then they go from the registration part to where they're going to sit down and fill out the exit tickets and then go back to class or whatever it might be. So outside, during doing it beforehand, like outside the cafeteria or something like that, we found is not very effective. It is much more effective afterwards. The other thing that we found really helpful is if we can get a faculty member or a coach or somebody like that who is really esteemed to stand around and help at the voter registration event. And, you know, it's not that hard to train them to help out. And we've also found it helps to have kids there with voter registration efforts. But I'm sure you know all of that. One of the ways that it's possible also to get into schools to get kids registered is through guidance departments. The guidance department knows the birth date of every single kid, and we've been able to encourage some of them to develop a practice of calling the kids down on their birthday, wishing them a happy birthday, and handing them a voter registration form. Okay. So, you know, what are you going to do? You know, happy birthday, here, register to vote, period. If you're not registered already, kind of thing. And then 2 months ahead, just check and make sure you've got all the supplies that you need, which were listed up in the front. A month ahead, you confirm if you need to pay for delivery, who's got that, make sure that the money is available. You have a check if you've had to write the check, whatever it might be. And that all the volunteers are up to date and ready to go on the event date. And then double check again about media. Now, there are most schools, in fact, I haven't met a school yet that doesn't have parents sign a form at the beginning of the school year, either allowing or not allowing their child's photograph to appear in public. So you need to make sure if you're taking the pictures that you do not use anything that has a child's face apparent in it, unless you've gotten the school to verify that that they have permission from the parents to do that. In some cases, only one that I can remember, and that was in Mercer County Technical School. They don't have that. And so we have our own release form. And if they don't have it, please use those release forms. Don't take a pic. Send them to the teacher, ask the teacher to send it to the parents ahead of time. And usually what the teacher would do is select maybe 5 or 6 kids who she thought the parents would say yes, get the photo permission, and then we stage some of the photographs using those kids. And then please send pictures back to us because we have a newsletter and we put it in the newsletter and we really, you know, pump up schools that have done this. 2 weeks ahead, just a whole series of confirmations so that you're comfortable that everything is set and ready to go. When the kids are voting, in order to judge how many machines you're going to need and how much time it's going to take, like if you've got 30 kids in a class, you need to know how long it's going to take that class to go through this. Well, if they've had a sample ballot ahead of time so that they can understand what they're going to be voting on inside the machine, and that's logical, you know, registration, sample ballot, or vote by mail ballot, then you actually go in to vote and then you get the results at the end of it. So they should have that, if at all possible, ahead of time. And the teacher can go over it with them, or if they're going through the rules of the road, whoever is running that rules of the road can go over their sample ballot with them. And in some cases, when the kids are standing on line to use the voting machine, we give them the sample ballot because not everybody reads it. So that way it's fresh in their minds. If they've seen it, it takes about a minute per kid to go through that was the Dominion machine that you saw. In Burlington County, there was a different kind of machine, and Sussex County was also a different kind of machine. And then it took more like 2 minutes. So you kind of have to keep 1.5 minutes in your mind as what would be a good way to judge how long it's going to take, because that will help you and the teacher know how the scheduling is going to go. Let the teacher do the scheduling. Don't you try to do it. They are accustomed to it. And then have the teacher decide what the kids do after they filled out the exit ticket. This is asking for the names of the kids that won't be traumatized. And then afterwards, hold the voter registration event and make sure you've got the vote by mail ballot applications there too. And then teach the kids that they most likely can vote either where they're going to away to school or in their home state. They usually can make that choice, not in every state, but in most, and have them understand how to get the information from the state where the school is if they need that using vote.gov. A week ahead, make sure that rules of the road is all squared away, who's going to do it, when it's going to be done. The day ahead, the voting machine should be delivered, and there is usually absolutely no question about that. But if you want, you can check with the person who was the person who agreed to receive the machine and ask them, is everything set? And then the day of the event, arrive at least an hour ahead of whatever the first class is. It will give you some breathing room. You probably will not need an hour, but at least you'll know you have extra time should something go wrong. We try to arrange the area where the voting machines are going to be so that it looks like an actual polling place. Now, the teacher needs to figure that out ahead of time, but we've got things like, you know, League of Women Voters signs that we can hang on tables. We've got banners for energizing young voters that we can put up. So we try to make it look as much as possible like the actual setting that the kids will go into. If we're going to use students as poll workers, we ask one person to be the trainer of those young people. So that's something that you don't need to take care of. There will, when the kids are working on that, we still have adults behind them so that they can answer questions as if the kids have them. We also ask two people, and these are normally students, one to hand out the ballot forms that they're going to be using, and one to hand out the I voted today stickers. And then we ask a teacher to monitor the exit ticket, not the teacher, a league member to monitor the exit tickets so that the kids get them and fill them out. All right, as the kids come into the room, oh, I should stop there. Any questions on all of that stuff with getting ready and setting up the room?
I guess it's somewhat of a related question. Is there a particular time of year you find it a better time to approach the school to do this? Or to avoid?
It depends on the Board of Elections. In Sussex County, which is a very rural county, the Board of Elections has asked that we do it every year for as many schools. There are 7 schools in that county, and they would like to do all 7 schools in January and February because that's their downtime. Okay. No other Board of Elections has asked for a specific time of year. I would avoid, well, you have to avoid the 6 weeks, 3 before and 3 after an election. It doesn't matter when you do it. It's effective no matter when you do it. So I would say do it whatever is most convenient for the school and for the Board of Elections.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So when the classes arrive at the polling place, I stop them before they come in. And I recommend that anybody do this and set expectations. You want to know that while they're in line waiting to get into the voting machine, they need to allow, you need to have a traffic pattern set up for yourself. So when you're setting it up to look like a polling place, make sure that the kids aren't crossing lines or whatever to get in. You want a way so that they can get up easily to the polling, to the table, and then move to the voting machines, and then move from the voting machines back to wherever they're going to be at the end. But you can point out that traffic pattern to them here. If by some chance you're going to be using rules of the road or the student advocate toolkit at the same time, explain that that's going to be happening and tell them that they're going to need to pay attention to the video to the presentation, and they'll be called by row or by table to go up to the voting machine when it's their turn. They need to keep their voices soft so that everybody can hear and not only follow the presentation, but so they can hear when the poll worker says, you know, so stop the presses. You can explain when you're finished giving instructions, you're going to go up to the poll worker and sign it, but you need to leave space between the person in front of you and you. And that is because there has to be a degree of privacy. And when you go to the poll booth itself, that's also the case. And we've had, I'm kind of mixing these things up in order, but we've had a couple of things that we've added to that talk at the beginning that are kind of fun. We've sometimes asked a school security officer to walk in while this is going on. And in New Jersey, there is a law, has been a law since 1985, that a police officer can't be in a polling place in uniform. They have to be at least 100 feet outside. And that was changed because there was a situation where intimidation occurred because of a police officer inside. And I say to the kids, you know, imagine now you can vote again after you've finished your sentence and you've returned as a citizen, and you walk in to vote for the first time and there's a police officer there. What do you think is going to happen to your stomach? You know, and they all recognize that it's intimidating.
Good.
And at that point in time, we also tell them that they can't do something called electioneering. So when you're standing online, you can't tell your friends who they should vote for, because that's not allowed in polling places. You can't do that unless you're at least 100 feet away from the entrance to the polling place, because nobody should have their vote influenced. You should be able to vote your conscience. And the third thing that we tell them is, like, you can't wear t-shirts or buttons or anything like that inside a polling place for the same reason. And you can't have your phone out because you're not allowed to take pictures. So
I was just going to ask that, yeah.
there's awesome things too. Pardon?
I was just going to ask that, yeah.
Yeah. So, and they get it. I mean, they understand that all that is very reasonable. And so we've never had kids that are, that kind of flaunt those rules. Well, I shouldn't say that. One time I had a kid shout out, if you don't vote for blah, 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 you know, blah, 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 and carrying on. So we asked the young gentleman to please step outside the room. And then we talked to him. And when he was calm enough after that, we let him go back in and vote. But, you know, we made the point that you can't do that, period. The other thing we make a point of before they go in to vote is that when they're signing in, their signature has to be your legal full name, and encourage them, if they don't know what that is, at the end, the voter registration people are there and they'll help you fill out a new form. So it's really just, and then because we have machines that, like I said, tend to grab the ballot from them, we go through showing them how to match the notch and that kind of thing. And very seldom is there an issue. Before we did that, we often had machines jam, and we had to have, you know, somebody go in and shut that vote down and start the machine again. So we go through all of that. Then we let the first people go in, and it usually goes really, really smoothly without any problem. And then the day following, we make sure that we do all that the machine's been picked up, and that we write the thank you notes, and that we send photos to the newspaper and the press release to the newspaper. If you can get them ahead of time to come, that's even better. But I've never had good luck with that in this particular situation. And then to help us, if you go back and make notes, everybody has commenting rights on this. So if you go back in and say, this worked, this didn't work, that's really helpful. Okay, so questions. I know it's a lot. It sounds overwhelming. It really goes very smoothly when it's broken down in little chunks, the way, you know, the way the calendar is.
Yeah, it seems to me like it's a huge project management kind of thing, and it would require someone who is good at juggling all the details and keeping track of things and staying in touch with people. And A little bit like setting up a candidate forum, which also requires coordination and cooperation, a similar kind of thing. So project management experience would be helpful if you're going to try to do a project like this.
And that's why we have that scope of work, because
Right.
that does help.
Right.
I'll tell you that, I mean, I've done it several times, and there was one time we did 3 in 3 days.
Wow.
Oh my God.
3 different school districts. So
Wow.
it was really essential to have some kind of like the shared folders and that scope of work. But the only, and the thing that drove me crazy was that in 2 cases of those 3, the coordinator's name was Jacqueline. So, so I would get a call from a Jacqueline and I'd think,
You
which
know
one
which
is this?
one.
Which one is this?
Wow.
But,
Be happy to just work on one. I don't think I could, I think you need
and
practice before you
that's
can deal with
all,
3.
that's all you need to do. Just, I keep, Barbara, you've never heard me say it, but every day this week I'm saying, keep in mind the number 1. You can't do everything. Just do one thing. Whatever it is that is your favorite thing out of all of the week. So,
Can I ask a very basic question? I'm on your website, trying to find the path to the basically workbook there that you were just going through. Can you take me back through there? I can't seem to find it.
let me go to the homepage again so that you can see.
I have it up in front of me, but
Okay. I'm going to share the screen again so that
Try
you,
that link.
oh, you put a link in?
Yeah, I think that might work for you, but may not. I don't know.
All right, let me see. It's just I thought I could find it on the website. Is it on the
Should.
website?
yes,
It
it is on
is.
the website. So let me share it for you so that you can see it. All right. So this is what the homepage looks like.
Right.
All right. And then let me move this down. So under what we do, or there are also little icons. You're going to go to the educators and community groups page, which
Right.
looks like this. Okay. If you scroll down, you'll see the 2 suites of programs.
Okay.
And the voting simulation is the next to the last one there.
Oh, it's buried in there. I forgot. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So there's the view module. And then the slideshow is right underneath that. And that has both the slideshow and the script. So all the
Okay.
wording is there. You don't have to worry about remembering everything.
It's under module 4.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, because these are the things that reflect empowering voters, and these lessons reflect defending democracy.
Oh, right.
But all of this, just you haven't heard me all week long. We are not advocates because we're only a 501c3, but we are educators. So we can teach kids to help them identify what their own major issue is. And we can teach them how to use the democratic processes in order to bring about a change they want to see. But when they get to the point where they are ready to advocate for something, then we pass them off to the League of Women Voters that they belong to and say, here's a kid that wants to testify. You help them. I have been handing them off to the state league because that's what we're underneath. And they're right in Trenton. And so the kids get to meet the people at the league in Trenton and they get to walk across the street to the state house. And I will tell you, it is really an amazing experience for them when they get to that point. So, and that's they become ambassadors for us. We have an actual program we call the Ambassadors Program. And the kids, when they join the ambassadors, they get an orientation program and then they choose to be on one of 4 committees. It's a legislative committee where they learn how to do all those things, or the education committee where they learn how to do all the teacher type things that we're doing, all of the stuff that I've just talked about, and all of the other modules. We have an outreach committee, which is similar to the voter services and to social media handling. So there are 2 branches to that. And we have a DEI committee. And the DEI committee goes through everything that we do to make sure that we are being as equitable as we possibly can be. And so we're aware when we're screwing up and doing something that we didn't even realize was creating an issue for people. So once they do that, then they meet monthly. 2 months in a row, they meet individually in their committees. And then the third month, they meet as a whole with all of the ambassadors and share what's been going on in each one of their committees. From that, if they have an interest, they can apply to be a board member. And we have a Young Voters Advisory Board member with 9 people on it. We can increase that number if should we have many more people, but I think 9 has been a really good number to date. And we have kids that are now aging out. I realized the other day somebody did something that concerned me. And I said to the person, I said, do you realize that some of these people on our board have spent a quarter of their lifetime working for energizing young voters and passing, I said, we forget we're old. How much passion there is in some of these kids.
Yeah.
And don't denigrate them. Don't leave them out when you're doing something that's going to affect them. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a big believer, and that's why I'm so passionate about youth engagement, because we have to empower them to realize it's their future and, not feel like, well, they're powerless.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So when I send out the videos and the summary of each one of the sessions, I'm also going to send some of the analysis that I got from exit tickets, from the voting simulation, from the timeline of suffrage, and some of the other, like Vote by Design, some of the other lessons that we've gone through this week, so that you can see in the kids' own words what this has meant to them. Because that's also stuff you can use when you're trying to sell the program to the school district. So. Okay, anything else?
Well, I just want to, I can't speak for the League of Women's Voters, but this is really excellent. I sort of personally see this as the next step for what we're doing. Like, we do a lot of high school registration drives, which are becoming less necessary now that you can do online registration and they're registered when they get their driver's license. But the next step is, as I think you said earlier, they may be registered, but the most important thing is that they vote. So
Right.
the next step is demystifying that process.
Yes.
And I really like this, doing it with their peers on a topic selected by their school, by their peers, that will most likely generate real interest. But I could see how, I think this is sort of the next frontier for high school engagement for voting, is to actually have them practice it. So this is excellent. And I'm very interested in hear the amount of support you had from your Board of Elections.
Oh, they're wonderful. They are really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you meet any resistance anywhere from schools or?
Only from the one county Board of Elections, and it's a county in our state that is often criticized for being a machine, where there's a fair amount of corruption and that sort of thing. So my sense is that they worry that us coming in will not be helpful to them in trying to clean up their reputation. But I'm hoping that if there are enough counties across the state that are doing this and are effective, that they will be less worried. They'll see the impact of it.
Yeah. So what percent of counties have you done this in?
Right now, we have 21 counties in the state, and we've done 7, so a third of them. And we've been doing this. We did it once before COVID, and then COVID hit, and then all of the rest of it has been after. So probably a dozen different ones since COVID.
Okay. And I would suspect that your main issue is manpower. I mean, I suspect that just getting people able to do all this work, is that the main barrier to getting it implemented in all counties?
No.
Okay,
No.
so what would you see as the barriers?
Capacity. More, just as Jean was saying, the idea of being able to manage so many projects. And I suppose it gets back to your manpower thing, but it's more of people need to understand how to do it. So at present, I've been involved in every single one of them because each time the league needed to have some assistance while they were doing it. We're getting to the point where that won't be necessary because once a league has done it once, then they're confident.
Okay,
So, once all 21 counties are done. But we also have, like, now the state is sort of divided into three parts. So we now have a really active group in the northern part of the state. And there was a gentleman that's been on most of the calls, and he has already committed to doing this in his county from now on. Because we did it in his county last year and he was instrumental in that. So once they've done it once, then I think I can say to them, all right, so you're in Bergen County, would you go help Passaic County do this?
Okay.
Kind of spread it that way. But this is the point at which that's likely to happen. Up until now, it's been me, plus a lot of other things.
okay, okay. Wow, this is excellent. And it's the I don't call it curriculum, but I guess the guide is really well written. Having done some of that myself, it's really looked at every single detail. So it's very impressive.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
really nice to hear. Okay, and you can always get in touch with us. Anytime you need any kind of help, we're here. If I can't answer the question, I'll connect you with somebody who can. So,
And I would love to see if we have the capacity to pilot something like this and see where it goes. But I have to say that Allison Gardner, who's really in charge of our youth engagement work, is so busy, so busy.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying a lot of this, I think, does come down to finding the volunteers and finding the people who become passionate about it. So
I
yeah.
think you'll find people do get passionate about it.
Yeah.
And that's why I said that the manpower hasn't been an issue. Once people do it, they like doing it. All I have to do is send out an email and say, all right, we've got an invite to do this in such and such a school district. And I get 5 or 6 people saying, oh, I'll help you, I'll help you.